What was the best relationship advice you ever got? Story 1. Keep in mind that you are not fighting against your SO during conflicts. You and your SO are up against the issue. Story 2. Never take each other for granted, show appreciation often. Story 3. Discuss life goals, especially kids, and financial habits before you get married. If one person wants 6 kids and the other wants to be childless, that's not going to work. If one person has champagne tastes and spending habits, but you as a couple have a boxed wine budget, then that is a problem. More than one marriage has been ended because one spouse is bad with money and refuses to live within their means. Story 4. Prioritize trust and build a strong foundation of it. Story 5. I love the quote, "I don't want you to save me, but you can hold my hand while I save myself." Support with respect is key. Story 6. There is no reason to keep score. You are both on the same team. If one, or both of you, starts keeping score with things, it is time to evaluate the state of the relationship and why this is occurring. On a related note, all problems can be solved, but not all problems are worth solving. Story 7. Remember to laugh together and keep the romance alive. Story 8. While in a relationship, don't lose yourself as an individual. Story 9. If the grass is greener on the other side, try watering yours. Story 10. Be each other's biggest supporter and cheerleader. Story 11. Practice active listening to understand each other better. Story 12. That relationships are so hard or marriage takes so much work is terrible advice. Relationships take effort and maintenance and mindfulness, but it shouldn't be work. It's a garden, not a salt mine. If literally everything is an uphill struggle all the time, you're not compatible. Move on. All relationships are so hard, y'all. Teaches people is to stay in relationships that are bad for them. Get therapy and find healthy partners. And definitely don't have kids if your relationship is already OMG so hard. Story 13. Don't look for a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship. Story 15. Never start imagining a life together before you even started. Get to know the person first, build it up from there. Story 16. A partner is the cherry on top of a cake. The cake is your responsibility. Translation. A good partner can make you happier in life but can never make you happy. It is your own responsibility to have a happy and fulfilling life. The inverse is a little different. A bad partner can ruin your happiness, but it is your own responsibility to not let a bad cherry ruin your cake, not let a bad partner ruin your happiness. Story 17. Even head over, heels in love people get on each other's nerves once in a while. It's not necessarily a sign of trouble, or that you're growing apart, or you or she isn't good or the right one. You're together almost all the time. It's a sign that you're human. Story 18. Make time. You'll always have 1,000,001 things that need your attention, but if you're going to be with someone, start a family with them. Make time for them. My dad, who is still very much in love with my mom, who isn't really feeling it anymore because she spent the last 35 years married to a workaholic farmer. Story 19. Not relationship advice per se, but something that helped immensely in all future relationships. I used to be a typical nerd, including some of the negative stereotypes associated with that. I was never introverted and got along well with most people. Very well with those in my immediate vicinity. One weekend, I was at a LARP event with some friends and met a girl who I liked and hit off with. It didn't work out, and she started seeing someone else that evening. I must have made a face or something because she noticed and gave me this feedback. I was in my own world most of the time, not caring that much about my appearance or the vibes I gave off. Spent most of my time slouched over. She said even though she liked talking to me, my whole demeanor gave off vibes of being somewhat unhappy. In the end, if there are two equally nice and interesting people, why would you choose to spend your time with someone who doesn't even appear to enjoy spending time with himself? It wasn't the most friendly advice, but it stuck, primarily about me being slouched over all the time, which I consciously tried to correct the following years. It worked. I was never unhappy with myself, but I never put in much effort towards other people either, which I changed, and I think it worked out for the better. In the end, a lot of relationship, whether intimate or other, is about effort. If you put an effort into maintaining it, you give significance to it from the other person's point of view. Story 20T takes a hell of a partner to beat no partner at all. Vet carefully and with a clear head. Does this person add to your life? Is being with them an improvement over your regular, solo life? Or are they an effort to be around, to accommodate? Story 21. I had a coworker who had a very happy marriage. I asked her how she chose her husband. She answered, "He was the nicest man I ever met." That was an epiphany for me. I went on to marry the nicest man I ever met. We've been married over 30 years. I won the husband lottery. Story 22. Your partner can't read your mind. Talk to them why you are upset or what is bothering you. Don't hold your negative thoughts inside. It will only make the situation more bitter. Story 23. If you have to constantly push your partner for anything, moving in, going out, doing trips, improving anything, getting engaged, it's not a partner, it's a wheelbarrow. Story 24. Do you want to live with a wheelbarrow? That made me laugh, but opened my eyes on lots of things. Story 25. IDK if it's considered relationship advice, but when I was around 14 and had my first serious relationship, I went to go see my girl in the evening. Before I went out the door, my dad stopped me and said, "Son, there's one thing that you should know, and after I tell you, I'll shut up about it. If a girl says no, that means no." Story 26. I felt really awkward ATM because it seemed obvious, and I felt like my dad saw me as an idiot. 10 years later, I still think about that moment and what my dad said, and I feel so proud of him for pointing out something that is really important. I feel like simple advice like that is not given often enough. Story 27. Try to fix your issues or break up openly. Don't make the same mistakes as me. My first breakup was extremely slow, painful, and cold. It caused my ex to mentally degrade and end up attempting suicide and haunting my life forever. Communication matters no matter how tired or selfish you are. Story 28. When you marry someone, you marry their whole family. I have always taken this to mean that you should learn about the family before you commit to the relationship. Story 29. Don't chase who's running. Story 32 pieces. 1. If you aren't going to remember being upset over this, it's not worth arguing over now. And 2. There are peaks and valleys in relationships. Don't give up until it's only valleys. Story 31. This wasn't something someone personally told me, but most recently I saw this quote on Reddit, and it really stuck with me. You don't know the person you're with until something life-changing happens. Story 32. Don't accept anything you wouldn't accept being done to a loved one. Story 33. Find your best friend and marry them. Story 34. Relationships are like Wi-Fi. Sometimes they go down, but a simple reboot, a hug, can fix it. Story 35. Don't sweat the small stuff. Choose your battles wisely. Story 36. Don't date anyone with a vastly different intelligence level to yourself. It'll never work out. Story 37. When your partner wants to have a serious talk, ask them if they want you to give advice or just listen. There's a huge difference. Story 38. Instead of repeating what's already been said, me ex left me, and for a few weeks afterwards, my friends, mom, sister, etc. kept telling me, "Why did she leave you? She's gonna realize she made a mistake and come back." My dad, though, brought me aside and straight up told me, "She's not coming back, let her go." So I did. I tried moving on with that mindset. Lo and behold, she never did come back. Fast forward a few weeks, and I met my now loving wife. This was 10 years ago. Thanks, Dad. Story 39. To find the type of woman you want, don't put your focus on finding her. Rather, focus on becoming the type of man that woman would want to be with, and she will find you. Source. My mom. It worked. I had this professor at university. He was an ex-Marine turned therapist. Big, cuddly, but very stern man. The class was interpersonal relations. He told us once that relying on a long-lasting love and relationship to be this explosive, magical experience will always lead to disappointment. He said, actually being in love is finding someone who annoys you in ways that you can put up with. And I have found it to be totally true. Story 40. Well, my mother was a staunch Christian and did not like the fact that I was gay, of course. But she once told me, never let a man know how much you love him, or he will shit all over you. She said Dad knew that she loved him, but never knew exactly how much, which is kind of sad when you think about it. Story 41. It's not about sex, it's about building a very specific and intimate bond with someone you're attracted to, being the one person they can go to for their deepest, darkest secrets, and trusting you to never reveal that to anyone else. Relationships aren't a game, and the person you're in the relationship isn't a toy. You start out testing the waters, determine if there's something to work with, and go from there and build a foundation for a long-lasting relationship that leads to a family. To be honest, I'm sick and tired of relationships where people test their partners, especially testing their trust. This generation of relationships has this misconception that their partner is a plaything to beat around with when, in actuality, you're only building into their distrust of everything, which just makes new relationships harder to build, and in some extreme cases, and entire bloodlines because someone really insisted on fucking with their emotion. Story 42. An old Italian coworker told me, treat a woman like a queen and she will treat you like a king. My wife gets coffee in bed every morning, and I get taken care of in return. 15 years later. Story 43. The single most important decision you make in life will be the person you choose to enter into a long-term relationship with. It will make or break you if you choose the wrong person, ignore flags, and base it on superficial merits. Choose wisely. Story 44. Put children second, your marriage is first. The children suffer if you don't continually put in the effort to maintain a healthy marriage. Story 45. Perceptions are not always reality. More often than not, if your partner does something that bothers you, it wasn't malicious or aimed at you. Rather, they didn't see anything wrong with it. Explaining your feelings and getting their take can help establish healthy and open communication. Story 46. A person should want you, not need you. Codependence places a massive burden on the partner. Obviously, this applies to yourself as well. Be a whole person, not a dependent one, before you get in a serious relationship. Story 47. That it only has to not work for one person for the relationship to not work. I used to stay in relationships where I was unhappy because the girlfriend was happy, and I didn't want to make her sad by breaking things off. So I'd stay in it, unhappy, until eventually we were both unhappy enough that we'd end it. I could have saved us both a lot of time and heartache by moving on sooner. Story 48. Recognize and validate what you do for each other, even the small things. Saying, I appreciate you doing X, even for a small thing that doesn't seem like much, shows that you're paying attention to each other. If they want to walk out of your life, let them. But if they cherish you and show genuine kindness, hold on for dear life and show them the same. Story 49. Look for what your spouse is doing right every day, and then express it, instead of the lazy default of trying to parent them with criticism. Like this, I sure appreciate how whenever I have something to share, you put down your phone or whatever you're doing and really listen. I feel acknowledged and your love. 14 years later, we'll still do this. Our marriage is filled with positive energy, joy, and love between us daily. P.S. If you look for what your spouse is doing right or wrong, you will find it. Story 50. Do you just want to vent, or do you need help solving the problem? In my experience, this is often the biggest block in couple communication. So asking this before a discussion can help you get into the right listening or helping mindset. Story 51. Never, ever gossip about your partner or your relationship problems to the world. Friends, family, social media. Keep your relationship private and protect it. The moment you divulge sensitive information about your relationship and or partner, you will lose their trust and they will never look at you the same. Story 52. Never go to bed angry, but also don't stay up late fighting. Now, the key here is to read angry as it is. You can go to bed not in love with that moment. You can go to bed not agreeing. You can go to bed feeling like you need to work on things. What you don't want to do is let things fester to the point that you go to bed feeling anger and hopelessness. The key is to agree that you will talk in the morning when you have had time to sleep and mentally rest as well. It can be hard sometimes, but I know I have never been able to meaningfully resolve a conflict when I'm physically and emotionally spent. Story 53. Several older couples have given me variations of the following. Be friends first. Marry your best friend. Build a relationship on friendship, not anything else. Story 54. You should want your partner, not need them. Be aware that they can leave if the relationship has no benefits to them anymore. That way you don't take them for granted and be disrespectful as much. Set boundaries and respect theirs. Story 55. Don't go into relationships with someone you don't know. Best is to be with a friend, not just someone you want to have sex with. Story 56. Not to always give advice when someone wants to vent, that it's important to listen and ask if they'd like help or just to be heard. Story 57. Go to bed mad. Fighting when tired is a manipulation. Emotions will be higher, you'll say things you don't mean, and agree to anything to go to bed. Think back on all your, I don't know how it happened, how we got here fights, arguments, were they late at night? Go to bed, there's a reason we sleep on big decisions. Just be sure to talk again tomorrow. Story 58. Listen, Morty, I hate to break it to you, but what people calls love is just a chemical reaction that compels animals to breed. It hits hard, Morty, then it slowly fades, leaving you stranded in a failing marriage. This is 100% true. Story 59. My mother told me this when I met my husband, and I've since passed the advice on to my daughters, as I feel it is how a relationship truly succeeds. Communicate and comprehension. Do not assume they know how you feel. You must clearly communicate how you feel and ensure that your feelings and theirs are comprehended. Story 60. I remember my grandfather regularly bringing my grandmother flowers, little gifts, praising her cooking, etc. When asked why, he would say, just because you're married doesn't mean you ever stop courting. They had been married over 40 years. Story 61. This is advice I got from my therapist while recovering from a toxic relationship. Make a non-negotiable list. Technically, you would do this while single. Write out everything you need from a long-term partner. Read it every day. Ingrain that list in your head. Because when new relationships start, it is so easy to get lost in the high of falling in love that you miss or shrug off the red flags. Stick to that list. You made it for a reason. You've already decided what you can and won't put up with from a partner. Story 62. Try not to vent about your partner to family or friends, and if you do, be very careful. Your family and friends love you more than they love your partner, and even when you forgive your partner, there's a good chance your fam and friends will still hold a grudge for how you said they treated you. Story 63. My uncle, who is married to his wife of over 20 years, said to me once, "Always put your marriage before your kids. One day the kids will grow up and leave, but your partner is yours for life." It always stuck with me, and I believe I would one day make an effort to live by this. Story 64. My grandmother once told me, "It's not you versus her it quote s, the two of you against the problem." She also heard me come home late one night and said, "The only people who stay out past midnight are police officers and prostitutes, and you sure don't look like a police officer." My nan was full of great lines. Story 65. Fulfill your duties before you ask for your rights. If everyone just fulfills their duties towards others, then everyone will get their rights. Story 66. Never go to jail for a woman. If she makes you so mad or does something to hurt you mentally, emotionally, physically, it's best to walk away and not get back at them. Story 67. Don't take relationship advice from people who are single, because most of the people that are single are so because they're unable to bend with their partner. Story 68. With every breakup, you learn what you don't want in a partner. You eventually arrive at a short list of what you do want in a partner and pick your mate based on this. Story 69. Some words of advice from an elder. Always kiss goodnight, even if you only had an argument moments before. You never know what the morning may bring. Story 70. It's not normal to say things like, "It's okay if you don't actually listen to me. I get that everything I say is stupid. Don't worry, I'm not mad, but can you at least nod or something to give me the illusion?" To your partner while sobbing on the floor while he's playing video games, not even looking in your direction. Story 71. Nothing too philosophical, more real-world applicable. Much like camping, hiking, leave no trace. Meaning, don't leave your dirty dishes laying around, don't leave your old socks in the living room. Pick up your own little messes, and it will make the house run much, much smoother. Story 72. My dad said this to me once when I was 19, and it always stuck with me. 9/10 times what you want to argue about isn't worth it. Wait until the 1/10 where it is, or when the time comes. The 1/10 will be drowned out by all the useless fights you picked. Story 73. Never argue dirty, no name calling or putting each other down. The issue will one day be forgotten, but the hurtful words most definitely will not. And saying you're sorry afterwards won't make it go away. Story 74. What other people do has more to do with them than with you. Applicable to both romantic relationships, family, and friendships. I think for me, as someone with anxious attachment and a lot of trauma to work on, this has been one of the best pieces of advice. This advice helps not taking it so personal when my own insecurities get triggered. Story 75. Don't forget who you were before you had kids. Too many parents turn into empty nesters and then completely fail to reconnect with their spouse. Don't lose sight of being a couple just because you are parents. You shouldn't need to reconnect. Don't lose that connection to begin with. I can honestly say that if my kids left the house right now, my wife and my relationship would not skip a beat. Story 76. If your spouse partner asks you to do something with them, do it. I was talking to an older coworker a long time ago about how my fiance likes to play video games. I don't particularly like them, but she told me to play if he asks me to. It's not so much about just doing what your partner asks you to, but actively participating in the relationship by trying new things and engaging. Story 77. You can ask your partner to do something. Can you please load the dishwasher? Or you can tell your partner how you would prefer them to do something. Next time you load the dishwasher, can you put the wine glasses on the second rack? But you can't do both at the same time. You would be amazed how much leaving some autonomy in a process reduces friction. Story 78. I don't know if this counts as advice, but when I was going through a rough breakup, I went online and looked for how to deal with a breakup. I landed on a site on how to tell if your relationship was toxic. I was able to check every box. I felt better after that. I made the right decision and there was no going back. Story 79. Life is short. If you're not happy, you're not happy, and you then do what you need to do. Mom told me that. Story 80. Don't take relationship advice from people who aren't in relationships, especially once you get married. Story 81. People say marriage is 50-50ths. That's BS. Marriage is 100%. Sometimes you give 50% each. Sometimes you can only manage 20%, and your partner takes up 80%. You'll be in balance a lot of the time, But when you're feeling put upon, remember that last time they took on more. You're a team. Take on the world together. Story 82. My soon-to-be wife and I got this advice early in our relationship, and I am glad we did. Make sure you make time for yourselves. Spending time with my partner is my singular favorite thing to do. She's my best friend and makes me laugh constantly, but that doesn't mean I don't need time, and that she doesn't need time alone. Sometimes that means she goes on a hike, and I play some disc golf by myself. Sometimes that's her reading in the other room while I play a video game or watch hockey. That way, you're keeping yourself happy while supplementing it with time with your partner. Story 83-1. We're on the same team. A lot of times, if a conversation is heating up, one of us will say same team, because we're usually on the same page and communicating things a little differently. It cools things off pretty quickly. 2. Uncommunicated expectations are planned resentments. This is a big one, and I only stumbled upon it in the last year or so. Any explanation I give will fail to convey the weight of this statement, but read it and think about it. It makes total sense. 3. Be cognizant of when your partner has a heavier load than normal. Pick up extra duties without being asked, or just do little things that help the other out. My wife and I each have a list of little likies, I named them, that are small things the other enjoys. We try to do those things for each other when we see that they may be needed. Story 84. When you're mad, remember who they are, not who your anger is turning them into. Don't assume malice when it's probably simple error or lack of consideration. Too often, we turn the people we care about into bad people who are making our lives hard on purpose when it couldn't be less true. If you can remember that you'll be a lot less upset, you'll get upset less often and you'll be able to communicate your needs better because you can do it without accusing your partner of being an asshole. Story 85. It's okay to be alone was the best advice I ever got. I needed to be okay with who I was alone versus with someone. Went from serial monogamy to 5+ years alone, and I'm a much better man for it. Story 86. I can't remember where I read it now, close to 20 years ago, but it's my one go-to piece of advice on the subject. Don't marry a person you can stand to live with. Marry the person you can't stand to live without. Story 87. Nobody gave it to me, but I intend to pass it on to any girl who dates my sons. Do not clean for him? Shared chores? Sure thing. But don't try to impress him by taking care of the home, because you're just teaching him to be a lazy POS. Story 88. Going to bed angry is okay. It means you can sleep on it and then talk it out properly rather than being dysregulated and unprepared for a productive discussion. Story 89. Observe her mother and her character and morals, because 9.9 times out of 10, that's how she will be. And if you can't live with that, run. Story 35 years. Make marriage a competition. See if you can give more. Do more than your spouse. Have them do the same. It's a blast and a competition you cannot lose. Story 91. Walking out of the hospital with my newborn daughter and my wife, an old couple, stopped us to see the baby, and then the old man looked at me and said, "Don't forget about yourselves, love each other, and remember not to make everything about the kid but about you and your wife as well." At the time it upset me a little bit, but that was almost 10 years ago and I remember the words, and I understand what he meant now. Crazy, hey. Story 92. Something that took me a long time realize is that relationships are not overly complicated, and making them complicated does not make them any more special. Relationships take work, and that work can come in different forms. But if you like someone and you like them, then you can find a way to make it work. If there is something in your life that you consider more of a priority, like work or extended family, and you aren't married or have kids, then just don't be in a relationship. Story 93. I thought this was sentimental, faux therapeutic shit for so long, until I realized that it's essentially the foundation to any functional relationship, especially if you come from trauma and dysfunction. If you do not heal what hurt you, you will bleed on people who did not cut you. So simple, so complex, so utterly mind-bending if you haven't yet properly taken it in. Do better, be better, give better, and be kind to yourself if you can't. Has given me more grace and more patience than a lot else. Story 94. If she'd it with you, she'd do it to you. Never get involved with someone already in a committed relationship if you're not prepared for the same to happen to you. Story 95. Put the damn phone down. If we are together, then the phones and the screens get turned off. Driving, put away the phone. The phone has become a third person in many relationships, and it just does not work. Story 96. If your partner does something that makes you angry and frustrated all the time it happens, make him buy you something you like. Small things like ice cream, coffee, etc. Now every time he forgets to throw out the trash, you will be happy for ice cream and not angry at him. Story 97. The best relationship advice I ever got, I got from myself. when I told myself to stop listening to other people because they don't know what I need or what I want. Story 98. Mauricio breakup advice. When your partner says they want to break up, listen to that choice. They have decided they no longer are choosing the relationship. Do not try to convince them otherwise. It never works, and you want someone who is committed to you, not persuaded into being committed to you. You want them to want it every time. Story 99. Not just regarding a relationship with someone else, but the best advice I ever got was when I was bad-mouthing about a bitch I was living with. He said, "What you are saying doesn't make me like you anymore." It was instant enlightenment for me that by dwelling on all the negative, I was being negative. Another friend always said, along these same lines, "Look for the good. No matter the situation or person, there is good to be found." Story 100. Sorry, long read by S.O. Worth It. The 5 A's is the best daily marriage check-in created by a wonderful counselor I know. This little marriage practice has tremendously helped my husband and I. The 5 A's by Roger Tirabassi. The idea came to me about 16 years ago, Roger explained. As a counselor, I'm always looking for ways to help people. And when it comes to marriage, I wanted to find ways to help couples stay consistent with each other, to affirm each other daily. I also wanted a simple way for them to clean up little irritations and frustrations, to keep those from building up. We've all heard that it isn't the big blowouts that take out marriages, it's the slow leaks. I've taught these ever since. I even teach them at every wedding I officiate, Roger said. I've heard from countless couples that it's really helped. Many men will say that they aren't good at communicating, but they can do this. Roger explained that people tend to do the right things naturally when they are dating or engaged. They focus on the strengths of the other person. If they do see weaknesses, they minimize them, or just assume they can live with whatever it is. Unfortunately, this reverses after marriage, and we tend to focus on our partner's weaknesses and minimize their strengths. Practicing the brief daily discipline of the 5 A's is a quick and effective way to strengthen marriages. Affirmation. Affirm each other for something the other person did or something you like or appreciate about him or her. Avoid making negative or sarcastic comments during your affirmation, such as "I was surprised that you actually helped me." Affection. Physical touch is essential to healthy relationships. Even when you are tired, it's important to be intentional with your affection. This can simply be a hug, a love pat, or holding hands. Apology. It's important to keep short accounts since it's so easy to hurt each other. If couples developed the habit of apologizing to one another every day, they might need less counseling. An easy way to do this is to ask, "Is there any way I irritated, frustrated, or hurt you today?" Each partner can only share one incident, after which the person who asked needs to respond with, "I am sorry for hurting you. Will you forgive me?" Try hard not to defend yourself during this time. Roger also stressed that this is for the more minor offenses, not relational felonies. Deep hurts need more focus and more time. 4. Ask. Ask your partner, "Is there anything I can do for you today or tomorrow?" Depending on what time of day you ask. Your request should be only one item a day. This gives you an opportunity to serve your partner. 5. Amen. The final A is the question, "How can I pray for you right now?" This may seem awkward at first for some, but most couples find it significantly improves their connection with God and each other. Keep it simple. For example, "Dear God, thank you for my spouse. I pray that you will help him/her with a specific need. Thank you, amen." Roger and Becky have practiced the 5 A's for years and have found the experience to be intentional ways of connecting daily. Roger explained that the success of the 5 A's is because they are a short 3 to 5 minute exercise that helps you connect and feel close with your spouse physically, emotionally, and spiritually. He suggests incorporating them into your daily routine at bedtime. You can take turns sharing one A at a time, or each partner can do all 5 at once, or vary things to find an order, and that works for you. Story 101. You should worship each other. It's a lot easier to forgive and make amends when you hold each other in high esteem, and you gain synergy when there's that type of energy coming from both. It can be a wonderful feeling to both get lost in the other. It probably leads to a better sexual life as well. Story 102. When my boyfriend and I got a dog together, we were stressed about the dog getting along with the cats. My roommate has never had a pet before and had all kinds of nonsense worries like, "What if the dog doesn't like me? What if the dog howls?" And worried about feeling responsible for taking the dog out anytime she enters the house, even though my boyfriend works from home and is there all the time. My commute to work is 7 mins, so I can easily come by during my lunch break to walk the dog. Anyway, my boyfriend wanted to get rid of the dog on like day 3. I was crying and upset because the dog deserved a chance. I called his mom because she's an amazing person that always gives great advice. She said to think about if there's maybe some things going on in his life that is overwhelming him, aside from the dog, and to put the conversation on pause. Because if we keep talking about it while upset, it won't solve anything. It's better to wait and go back to it once we've calmed down. That's exactly what we did. He was feeling pressured with school and whatnot. I offered to take all of the responsibility of training the dog and taking her out and whatnot. Of course, he did help with taking her out. We ended up finding a really good dog trainer, and now the doggy and kitties can hang out together without issues. Story 103: Love yourself first, or you'll never be able to love someone else and not make their life awful. Story 104: Don't love with your heart or with what's in your pants, love with your head. With time and age, I've come to figure that the other two's input needs to have a say. But he was right. The decisions in love need to come from your head. All the heartfelt infatuation in the world can't save you from a problem that your logic could have solved in 60 seconds. Story 105: I was engaged, told a whole bunch of people about it, and absolutely miserable. I was sticking with it out of sheer pride. A great friend was listening to me vent about it and said, "So, ignore me if this isn't any of my business. But if you're gonna marry this lady and spend the rest of your life with her, shouldn't she make you happy?" Story 106: Don't try to be a hero in a relationship. Before I met my wife, I dated people who had real serious issues, and I thought that if I loved them and sacrificed enough that I would change their lives or make them happier people. But you can't fix people's lives like that. People need to take control of their own life. So after that, I purposefully made sure to date someone who didn't need me and didn't need anyone to make their life. Which is honestly way more rewarding for everyone, and I still sacrifice for her, but she does the same for me, and we make each other's lives better for it. Story 107: My brother, when our baby was born, pulled me aside and said, "Look, everyone is telling you it goes by too quickly and all that bullshit, but it's hard. The thing is, it just keeps getting easier. Anytime you look at your wife, and you're both overwhelmed, and you think this is my life now, stop and say, this is my life right now, because in a week it'll be different. Don't make any relationship decisions based on a phase that lasts 3 months. Story 108: My father, who was a first-class womanizer, told me when I was 10 years old to never allow a man to take from you what you don't want to give, and you will be treated as good or bad as you allow anyone to treat you. And finally, he told me that if a man lays a hand on you, say nothing, wait till he falls asleep and beat the shit out of him, then walk away and never come back. I'm 60 now. My dad has long been gone, but I've lived my life by those rules, and only once has a guy put his hands on me. I was 16. I couldn't sleep, eat, or function until I had it out. Scared the shit out of him too. I gave my children the same advice, and thankfully they're happily married with good, loving men. Story 109: At the rehearsal dinner before our wedding, my 96-year-old great-grandmother told me, "If you want a peaceful marriage, keep his stomach full and his balls empty." Then she laughed so hard that she had to readjust her oxygen tube. I know it was crass and sounds like some old-timey patriarchal BS, but I've always remembered it. That's really all it takes for him to be content with our life, and he always goes above and beyond to take care of me and the kids. He would move mountains for me, and all I have to do is make him a ham sandwich and suck his dick a few times a week.